Hi, and welcome to the Campbell River Chamber of Commerce Insights and Business. My name's Randall Heidt. I'm delighted to be your host today. Recently, we surveyed our Chamber of Commerce members, and we found that about 200 of you believe that aquaculture is one of the leading economic drivers in the Campbell River area. So we brought with us today the Executive Director of the BC Salmon Farmers Association, Jeremy Dunn. Jeremy, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Maybe start off by telling us about the BC Salmon Farmers Association. Who are its members and why do you exist?
So our association's been based here in Campbell River for about 30 years now, representing the wide spectrum of finfish aquaculture, primarily salmon. We have 52 members in our association. 7 of those members are primary growers of fish, and the other members are involved in the full value chain somewhere, whether it's trucks or processing or feed or diving, providing services to the sector here on Vancouver Island, and some of the companies are based in Vancouver and other parts of North America.
About how many people are employed in the salmon farming industry in BC?
Well, our total jobs generated, we had an economic impact survey done by MNP, updated just a few months ago, and the total number of jobs generated by the activity is about 6,600 jobs. About 4,500 of those are direct in the sector, and the others are secondary or tertiary jobs created by the economic activity. It's a $1.5 billion industry here in British Columbia. The value of that's up 37% in just the last 3 years. And important to note for viewers here in Campbell River and North Island is 70% of that economic impact is felt here in Campbell River and up through the North Island and on the west coast of Vancouver Island.
How does that compare, 1.5 billion, how does that compare to other industries in BC?
Well, from a provincial perspective, we're a modest player in the provincial economy. From a Vancouver Island perspective, aquaculture is one of the top 2 private employers here on the island, neck and neck with forestry. So from a local perspective, it seems to be becoming quite an important industry, and it has a very positive future for growth as well.
About how many sites are there in BC, and about how much of the coastline does it take up?
Well, it doesn't take very much space. It's 0.05% of the available coastline is salmon farms. Now there's some farms south to Seashell, and farthest north is Clem 2 on the central coast. We've got farms on both the east and west side of the island. There's 109 total sites. On average, you'll find 60 or 70 of them are active at any one time, and the others are fallow as per the farming practices, similar to what you would see in terrestrial-based agriculture, where some fields are being planted while others are remaining fallow.
I read a report recently by the Reddit Institute New Zealand, and it estimated that the world demand for animal protein was going to double by 2050. Where is that going to come from, and what role will the BC salmon farming industry play on that, do you think?
So where it's going to come from is a massive question. It's actually the question that has propelled the WWF to make food supply and how we raise food their #1 environmental issue. Arable land, if it's available for farming today, it's being farmed. On our arable land, as a society, as humanity, we're going to need to find greater ways to have more intensive agriculture, but try and have less of a footprint. The area on the planet that we are not utilizing for farming primarily is the ocean. There's more ocean than land on planet Earth, and we're not utilizing it as society to grow food, plants and animals. And you look here in British Columbia, we have a nice, healthy shellfish sector. We have great opportunities in shellfish, and we have a solid finfish aquaculture sector, and we have fantastic opportunities in finfish as well. And there's research in plants that are grown in the water as well. So we have the ability to feed ourselves here in BC, but we also have a great ability, and I would think responsibility, to help feed the rest of the world with the resources we have, done in a sustainable way so that we can continue to replicate that in the future.
How much of BC salmon goes around the world, or where does the BC salmon go?
Well, our members raise about 80,000 metric tons. I know it sounds like a lot. Globally, We're the number 4 farming region in the world, but we're about 10 to 12 times smaller than Norway, where they raise 1.2 million metric tons a year. About 30% of the salmon we raise here is consumed in Canada. Canadians love BC farm-raised salmon. Americans can't get enough of it. Our fish is sold fresh into the market on a daily basis. About 50,000 metric tons goes to the United States. And we're sending as much as possible to new customers in Asia, in China, in Korea, in Japan, and other countries in Asia. Those markets are growing. And as our members raise more fish, we know that there's markets around the world that are very hungry for healthy, sustainable protein.
I remember in that report that there's a graphic I always remember, and it shows basically how much protein is needed to produce a protein of animal flesh, basically. And it had salmon down at around 1 to 1, almost just a little bit over that. And then it had beef in the 6 to 9 kilogram range to produce 1 pound of animal flesh. So, you know, when you look at that from an environmental perspective, it seems like you were saying that, you know, salmon would be the preferred choice, I guess, for solving that world protein. Do you find that there's an inordinate amount of critics for salmon farming compared to beef, or are we just more aware of it here in BC?
Well, every industry has its critics, and healthy dialogue is important to our sector, and I believe to all sectors, and it's really part of why we do things really well from a societal perspective here in BC and in Canada. From an environmental perspective, every activity we do as humans has an impact. Every meal we eat had an impact to create that meal. We did a life cycle analysis last year comparing the total environmental impact of raising salmon versus chickens, cows, and pigs, the most common protein that you would find. And into that life cycle analysis, we put in the amount of air you might use, but from a pollution perspective, land, water, and eutrophication from the waste from the animals. And what we found was that salmon is actually 30% lower cost on the environment than chicken, which is the next best. And it's 300% less cost on the environment overall than beef. So we would think eat salmon 3-4 times a week, eat beef once every couple of weeks. I love a steak. I'm not saying anything poor about our friends in the beef industry, but from an environmental perspective, if you're very concerned about your footprint, choosing salmon is leaving a lighter footprint on the planet.
That's a great point, thank you. Some people are concerned about, I guess, the environmental impacts. I'll build on that a little bit more, what you said, particularly on wild salmon. And has there been some criticism that the industry is not very transparent in terms of sharing that information? How important is public reporting to the industry and to the association?
Yeah, so you know, we've heard that criticism for many years, that people don't know enough about our sector, and they have concerns with respect to what farming salmon in the ocean might be doing to the overall environment, and particularly to wild salmon. That's why we run farm tours as an association, and our member companies do every year. We take a few hundred people each year out to salmon farms and take them everywhere. There's no off-limits place for a tour on a salmon farm. You've been on one yourself, and anyone who's been has seen what happens on farms. As well, our members post online on a very regular basis significant amounts of data from their farms, whether it's from a fish health perspective, sea lice, water temperature, and overall health of their stocks. Most of that governed by the Aquaculture Stewardship Council certification, which our members are working to achieve. So that certification was developed by the WWF over an 8-year period. It's become available over the last 4 years, and our members have committed by 2020 to be 100% certified to this certification. Today we're about halfway there, and that's as fast or faster than any country in the world. And I firmly believe that the hardworking men and women involved in the sector here, the Canadians that are putting this technology to work to meet this certification, will meet that goal.
I was looking at that same report, and it showed a lot of. There's a whole page of certification, provincially, federally, nationally on there. Why is that so important to the industry, and are they going above and beyond, or is that just what they're supposed to be doing in terms of that?
So all certification is voluntary. We have very strong regulations here in Canada, and our members meet those regulations with regularity, but they go above and beyond from a certification perspective. Some certifications are designed to ensure that the customers have a bar to which you are raising your product, be it environmental or social, or what that customer may work with. Others are to show and provide third-party authenticity that you're doing what you say you're doing. So it's many companies will tell you that they're doing the right thing. Our members are telling and showing and having it audited on every single crop that they continue to meet the highest bar. As an association, we think that's important.
When you look at places like Norway and Chile and other places, like you said before, Canada's fairly small. What does the future look like for the BC industry? Is there room for growth? What does it look like?
Well, we think the future here is incredibly bright. We have a good nucleus of companies, a great nucleus of talent, and we have a number of training programs coming online which we believe will create further talent for our operations here in BC, as well as other parts of Canada and potentially around the world. Aquaculture, especially with respect to salmon, is going through a constant metamorphosis. This is a very young industry that continues to advance, and with new technologies, we believe there will be a greater level of production, both in the sea and on land, in a number of forms, and look forward to helping to bring that here to BC so that we continue to have the highest standard of sustainability and environmental performance in the world, and create more meals for people here in BC and Canada and around the world.
Jeremy, I'd love to talk with you some more. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us on Insights in Business with the Campbell River Chamber of Commerce. Hopefully after the break you can join us. We'll have some other people from the aquaculture industry here to give their take on what's happening with them. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a few moments. Hello and welcome to the Campbell River Chamber of Commerce Insights and Business. My name is Randall Heidt. I am delighted to be your host today. We surveyed our members recently, and 200 of you said that aquaculture is one of the top economic drivers, one of the top 3 in fact, in the Campbell River area. So we thought we would bring together some of the top leaders from the aquaculture industry today to join us and to tell us about the industry. So starting with Rocky Boschman, thank you very much, Managing Director of Grieg Seafood, and David Kimmel, Managing Director of Cermak, and Dean Dobrinsky, HR Director for Marine Harvest. I almost made you Managing Director there, so. Okay. Thank you all very much for joining us here today. Let's begin with you, Dean. Maybe tell us about Marine Harvest, you know, the history of the company, how many people you employ, and kind of give us an idea of the company.
Sure. Marine Harvest has been in the Campbell River area since about 2007. We came together between a number of acquisitions. Right now we have 6 hatcheries, freshwater farms. We have 30 sea sites, and we have about 550 employees ranging from Clem2 on the north central coast to a processing plant in Surrey, BC.
And Rocky, maybe tell us about Grieg, the history of Grieg, and your time there.
Mm-hmm. Grieg, this past year actually was the 25th anniversary of Grieg Seafood around the world. So the Grieg family, which is the majority shareholders of Grieg Seafood, decided about 25 years ago that this was a good business for their family to be in. And they started salmon farming. There's 4 divisions in the world. There's 2 in Norway, 1 in Shetlands, and then our operation here in Canada. I've been with Grieg for a couple of years now. We have about 150 employees spread out on operations both on the west coast of Vancouver Island and on the east coast of Vancouver Island as well. Our hatchery is in this town of Gold River.
Oh, excellent. David, tell us about Cermak.
Yeah, so similar history to Marine Harvest and Grieg, where smaller companies sort of amalgamated over the years to form what is now Cermak Canada. We're also multinational, so we have operations in Chile and Norway as well. We're the second largest producer farmed Atlantic salmon in the world behind Marine Harvest. Here in BC, we have about 240 employees. These are spread out across 23 marine sites, 3 hatcheries and 1 processing plant. And we grow about 22 to 24,000 tons of salmon annually here on the coast. We have operations based out of Tofino on the west coast, and out of here in Campbell River, where we have farms in the Discovery Islands on the backside of Quadra, and farms also located in the Broughton Archipelago to our north off of Port McNeill.
David, I read that you spent some time fish farming in Tasmania. Maybe tell us about that, the difference between Tasmania and BC, and then what brought you back to BC.
Yeah, I was down in Tassie for 11 years. It was a fantastic experience. Other than getting used to warm Christmases and cold summers, in aquaculture, globally, no matter where you farm, there's challenges and opportunities. So as long as where you operate, you're focused on maximizing and driving efficient production, having the right people in key roles and on the farms, and focusing on what needs to be done to make the industry sustainable, you can have success pretty much anywhere.
Excellent. Dean, there's hopefully we're going to get some people interested in the aquaculture industry today as we talk. What would you say to someone who wants to get into the industry? What kind of training is there available? Are there jobs, and are they good jobs?
Absolutely, they're jobs. I mean, as you've heard, the industry continues to grow. Most, if not all, of our managers in our company, for sure, they all grew up in the industry. They all started as technician levels, as hourly employees, and came up through the ranks through our internal training programs, through career development programs, where now they're leading the company and leading the industry. It's a great industry for people who want really lifetime careers and opportunities to find interesting things to do. There's no shortage of opportunity in our industry. And it's one that particularly on the North Island, people should really take a hard look at a place to go to.
Do you find with both of you as well that there's opportunities with your companies as well?
We are always looking for people. We are always short a few positions. We're always actively recruiting and competing against these fine gentlemen to try to attract the good talent and as Dean mentioned, people who are looking for a career into the company, for sure. Lots of opportunity.
Yeah, once again, just mirroring the comments that we've heard already. I mean, we're always looking for good people. It's still a relatively new industry. It's been around for about 40 years on the coast, which really is not a long time. And proper training and education tailored to open ocean aquaculture is once again something that hasn't been around for a long time, and it's not for everybody. So it takes some time to find the good quality people that want to make a career out of this exciting and prosperous industry. But I welcome anybody who's interested in the field whatsoever, no matter how much, to research, reach out. We have HR people who will be more than willing to take phone calls, discuss opportunities, and just ensure that people are across the opportunities that do exist for them here locally on the coast.
Rocky, you've been in the industry for an amazing 32 years. Tell us about some of the technology and innovation and changes over that time.
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Victoria in 1986. A young guy, just like we were talking about, looking for something to do, looking for a good career, and I was very lucky that when I came out, the industry was just really taking off and getting a toehold on the coast. And back then, I think the way you could describe it is that there was a lot of heavy lifting back in those days. We really used our backs a lot. We had to lug all the equipment and feed bags all over the place, and certainly the industry has become a lot more mechanized. You know, we have lots of good equipment now and technology to help the people on the farm and make it a better and safer workplace, for sure. But it's also become a lot more technical. The work has become more technical. So, you know, we spend a lot more time and have more equipment to try to understand the environment, to measure the dissolved oxygen in the water, or to look for the presence of harmful plankton, and then to try to control those things as well. We've developed a lot of technology. So that's another thing about the work, is it's become really rewarding, technical. There's a lot of opportunity to learn the science and the environmental science in what we do. And a lot of people that are coming into the industry have that background, or that's their interest. And then we have a lot of internal training, as David and Dean has mentioned as well. We have a lot of opportunity to train people for them to get the most out of that career.
What are some of the things maybe all of you could mention about what's some of the technology and innovation we're going to see going forward? Are there going to be, it seems to be continual improvements, over the years, and I don't know if you want to start, maybe Dean, anything you maybe see coming forward for new things in the future that people might see?
I think that from the things that I see, there's greater innovation on in feed systems, in delivery systems, in how we educate our people, e-learning processes, distance processes like that. That's going to continue to advance. We have a significant increase in automation and computerization in our processing plants, which is changing the way that we get better recovery for our fish processing. So it's continuing to change. That improves the level of safety. It also demands a much higher trained employee to come in. And so we either have to provide that training or ensure that our employees get that training.
David, maybe with you with Cermaq.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and really great answers we've heard here too. So if we start in hatcheries, for example, so it's so important that our fish that we put to sea get off to a good start. So technology improvements in recirculation aquaculture systems on land that we all operate here on the island, preparing our fish to go to sea so they enter the sea at the right weight, has evolved immensely and will continue to evolve immensely over the coming years. And then on the back end also, we work and we operate in a very dynamic market. So business intelligence programs, we have geographically diverse operations. There's multiple things happening on any given days. There's lots of data coming in. So how are we actually collecting that data to make better decisions moving forward, whether it be how we stock our farms, what size fish we put to sea, when we harvest them, what we feed them, and ultimately where we sell them and what price we can fetch in a very competitive global market.
Where do you sell them? Where does all the BC salmon go?
Well, I can speak for Cermaq. We're basically 60% of our fish go into the United States, 30% stay in Canada, and about 10% head over to the Asian markets. There's some flexibility throughout the year, depending on demand and supply also from other parts of the world that see those numbers shift slightly, but overall that's the general consensus. Cermaq in particular, we focus on whole fish. Every fish that leaves our processing facilities is left head-on and gutted. Now, yes, it does go to further value-added processing places around North America where it's filleted or portioned and end up in supermarkets and retail chains around the North American market, but we focus on selling whole fish that are gutted.
Is that similar markets for marine harvest?
It's very similar, I think, for growers on the coast as a whole. I think we have really a really dynamic market, very unlimited. People around the world all want BC salmon. And the I-5 is a great corridor for us to ship our product down to the United States, and it gives us that competitive advantage for over growers in other places in the world, that we can supply that great American market from here. But other places as well, as David mentioned, Asia, they love our salmon. They would like to get a lot more of it, and if we could grow more, we would certainly be able to sell it.
I actually was at an event with all of you before, and there was you had a bunch of buyers from China, and they basically, some of the people I talked to said, we would buy everything you could produce. So when you look at that and you look at Norway and Chile, and we were talking with Jeremy Dunn recently about where BC fits in the world market there, what's the opportunity like going forward for expansion for the BC market, Dean?
Well, I think the BC coastline is one of the largest coastlines in the world, and we have, if you compare the number, well, you just compare the production in Norway versus 1.1 or 1.2 million tons versus 80,000 tons in BC on a similar coastline. There's a ton of opportunity for growth in BC, provided that we have we have the right infrastructure to continue to build. As Rocky and Dave have both said, we have an incredible market for our product. We have an incredible product that the demand continues to grow, and as long as we get the opportunity to build our business, we'll continue to try to meet that demand.
David, when we talked before, you talked about the importance of Indigenous workers and people with Aboriginal ancestry. Tell us about what Cermaq is doing for that and why that's important to you.
Yeah, well, not just Cermak, but it's front and foremost for the industry in general. Relationships with our stakeholders, whether it be Indigenous people or some of the smaller communities up and down the coast, is first and foremost when it comes to the way we conduct our business. We all operate with different protocols and agreements with numerous First Nations communities. 80% of the product grown on the coast is done under an agreement or a protocol with a particular First Nations group. I can speak to our agreement with the Ahousaht people in Tofino, where we have about 70% of our production located. And if there is to be expansion in the future to meet this ever-growing demand for our fantastic product, it won't happen without those agreements and those protocols in place.
Dean, would you like to build on that at all?
Only to agree with David. We can't grow without the effective working with our stakeholders and with our partners, and we continue to try to build those relationships, whether that's working with hiring groups from those areas, whether that's contracting work, whether it's just building normal relationships to try to educate people on the importance of the industry and how effective the industry can be.
Rocky, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, sure. I think there's the one more thing that I could add is that the jobs that we do provide to all communities is that we provide the jobs in the communities where people live. So in our operations on the West Coast, the people who live in Gold River and the First Nations in whose territory we are feel very lucky to be working in, we can provide those jobs in that area. And so people can live and work in the same community. And that's just the same in Tofino, that's the same in Port Hardy. And I think that's a big value that this industry brings to the economy of the coast.
We're getting close on time. I'll put this one last question to all of you. I have about a minute or so. What's the future for the BC salmon farming industry? Maybe tell us about that.
Well, you know what? I probably share the same optimism as the other guests here. You know, I've been doing this for 32 years, and I'm just as excited every single day to come to work. It's fun to work with very passionate, optimistic people. But as Dean mentioned, we live in probably the best place in the world to grow salmon, and I think that more and more the people around us understand that. They appreciate the value that we bring to the economy, and we're all hopeful that we get just a reasonable opportunity to grow the business.
David, how about you in Cermak?
Yeah, no, I can mirror those comments made by Rocky, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity, this show in particular, to educate. And we need to do just that. We need to get out there, we need to educate people about what we do, why about what we do is so great, and what the future could look like if given the opportunity. And one thing about this industry that I'm really passionate about is its continuous focus on improvement.
Dean, last but certainly not least, what's the future look like for marine harvest in BC?
I think the future for marine harvest, as well as for Cermak and Greek, for the industry, is tremendous. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for growth. There's a tremendous opportunity to add great, high-paying, value-added jobs to the North Island that is going to really benefit the economy of BC and the people of BC. And I think the future is there's nothing but positives.
Thank you all very much to the three of you for joining us today. We really do very much appreciate it. And hopefully you'll join us in the future. And hopefully you'll join us in the future on Insights in Business with the Campbell River Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for watching. We do appreciate it.